Hi, I'm Lainey Cameron,
And I am Paulette Stout.
and we are so jazzed to be here for the very first episode of the Best of Book Marketing, which is going to be both a podcast on audio. We'll talk more about that. And we are broadcasting live. You can find us right now on YouTube, on Women Writers, Women's Books page. Hopefully, you can also see us in the group, which is a phenomenal group of writers, almost 20,000 writers. And we're going to start by introducing ourselves, telling you a little bit about this new podcast and why we're doing it. And we're going to get into some fun content. We're going to talk about some of the biggest mistakes that writers make. So, and
Mm-hmm.
yep.
You know you
Yeah.
do it, girl. You know you do it.
And we've made some of them ourselves. So, yeah.
Yes. A few too many.
So, hey, we wanted to start with a little bit of a personal introduction because not everybody watching here knows you and me, Paulette. Some people do, some people don't. So, we were going to start by kind of introducing ourselves. You want to go first?
Sure. I am Paulette Stout. I am a lifelong marketer over 30 years, working in the corporate and nonprofit space in marketing. I'm currently the director of brand marketing for a NASDAQ listed public software company. And I am the author of 3 novels. I write contemporary women's fiction / contemporary fiction, spicy y'all. So hopefully you'll check them out. And I do author coaching too. So lots going on. How about you, Lainey?
I am very similar to you in that I come from a marketing background. So I'm not terrified of marketing like many writers. I mean, you have every right to be terrified of marketing, mostly because it ends up wasting your time sometimes. And I hate that. We'll talk more about that. But I come from a marketing background. So I did I started out my career before I was an author. I started out my career with startups, companies like IBM. I managed multi-billion dollar divisions of IBM, creating all their marketing plans and strategies. And then I ended with 10 years in startups. And it's always fun getting businesses off the ground because you start with nothing, right? You don't even have a name for the company. You don't have a name, you don't have a brand, kind of like starting your author career where you're starting from scratch, right?
I was
And you
just
have to
thinking
work,
that.
yeah. And you have to work out like who's your target customer, in our case, who's your target reader. And so I come from this background of understanding marketing. And then I came to this as an author and was so surprised by how much garbage we were telling authors. Here is the list of 500 things you must do to market your book. By the way, 499 aren't worth your time and don't actually work, but you should do them anyway because someone told you should. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of what got me into wanting to help authors with marketing because I just got so frustrated coming from that background myself with all the garbage we were telling writers to do. And I don't have many hours in the day. I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't have time to waste on stuff that doesn't work. And so
Oh,
that's kind of what brought me into this. And we'll talk a little bit more about what I do for people in the marketing space. But that's my background. And I'm a writer of women's fiction. I have one book in the world, a second one that I have now rewritten for the 3rd time. If anyone's wondering what happened to my second book, I'm still working on it. I promise. I promise. And my first one won a lot of awards, like yours, Paulette, right? We both won like
yes. Oh,
lots and
yeah. I
lots,
forgot what
more
the
than
award
10.
thing. Yes.
Yeah. And I have another podcast called The Best of Women's Fiction that I started during my debut year, which is a reader facing podcast. And I'll have some fun news on that soon, I hope. But that's been an interesting experience again. And it became an award winning podcast a couple of times. So I reckoned, why not take all of those things, my marketing expertise, the fact that I'm an author, the fact that I know amazing people like you, and do something to help authors with marketing.
Yeah, it's for sure, Lainey, because I think like me, like we are in author groups, we're answering questions, and it just felt like this made sense to have a bigger platform to answer questions that can help way more people than we could ever do like in a Facebook group.
Exactly. And so that's kind of us and why we're here. And we'll talk more about this, but we're going to be broadcasting live once a month on the second Friday of the month, which is right now at 1 p.m. Eastern. And then we'll be turning this into an audio podcast episode. So if you're more the kind of person that likes to like clean your house or drive around listening to things, you'll be able to get the audio version on all the platforms. And people are already asking me, how do I find it? Where is it? It's going to be on Spotify. It's going to be on Apple. 2 Fridays from now. So I think that's Friday 24th. You'll find it first thing in the morning. Give us a couple of weeks to get it all sorted and up, but you can do either. You can watch us live in Women Writers, Women's Books or on our YouTube channel, or you can listen to the audio.
It's kind of like listen your way, just like the philosophy of marketing, right? How people can take all the information in and then use what works for them. So we're all about being flexible, y'all.
Yeah, and Paulette and I had some great conversations for this. Like, are we going to only focus on indie books, for example? Should we only do indie marketing because indie authors own their own marketing? And then I said, well, Paulette, I came from a small publisher and I had to do all my own marketing too. So I think everybody needs marketing help, but it does differ. And so you'll hear us as we do this podcast try and say, this is really relevant if you're with a big publisher, or this might be different if you're an indie author. We'll try and remember to say that because we are going to talk to all the publishing models here, not just one particular publishing model.
Right. And I think the beauty of marketing in general, the fundamentals of whether you're marketing software companies or breakfast cereals or technology, the fundamentals are all the same. It's you have something you are marketing to someone, and the something and the someone changes, but the principles of marketing really are very the same for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, we were going to talk about that a little. So, one of the things we'll do in this podcast is when we can, we will give you great resources, whether it's someone else's resources or something we can make available. Paulette already has some great blog articles out there. And so, the first thing I want you to know is if you go to our website, which is bestofbookmarketing.com, you will find a page called Tips and Resources. And you already have a ton of where we recommend to go, Paulette's blog articles. And I'm giving you something I've never given out before. I'm going to give you my book marketing framework for free. So this is the framework that my entire program that I teach for authors is based off. And it's a 4-part framework. And it's how I see the question of what should be in a book marketing plan. And so I can talk a little bit more about that now, but I wanted you to know that you have a download on the website, which is actually a 5-page PDF that I put together explaining my perspective on how you build a good book marketing plan.
It's a really great resource. You also go check it out. She's way nicer than me. I have a tips and resources thing, but you know what? You got to pay for me to get that, y'all. So that's not there, but go check out Lainey's list. It's going to really be a great place to start.
So Paulette, what is your philosophy of how do you think about marketing a book? And you're coming at it, especially from an indie perspective. You've had several successful indie books. How do you think about this whole question of what does marketing a book look like?
I think it's all about, start knowing your why for sure. What are you trying to accomplish with your book? And just there's so much information out there. Just to remember, you don't have to do all the things. You read so much and you'll read one blog and they'll say one thing. You'll read another blog, they'll say another thing. And you'll sign up for a free webinar and they'll say one thing. And then you take a course and they'll say something else. Then you talk to your friends and you just get really overwhelmed by all of it. So just know you don't have to do everything. And you can do different strategies and tactics at different stages of your author life. So don't feel overwhelmed like you are falling behind if you're not doing something that you see another author doing.
I like that. Yeah, like I said, I hate these lists of here's 400 things you must do, or even 50. How many of us can do that many things? So my framework, I have 4 parts to it. And my theory is you need to do something in each of the 4, but it can be a small number of things. It doesn't need to be, a huge list. And so the way I think about it, you've got some foundational stuff that you have to get right in order to market your book. So the most important thing in the foundations is your target reader. We're going to talk more about this, but understanding the person who will adore your book. And I really mean that, not the person who might kind of sort of like it, will adore, will fall in love with it, and will tell all their friends how much they fell in love with it. And so that's kind of the most important element of your foundation. But your foundation also includes what are your Amazon categories, your keywords, all the basics, your author brand, your platform, your author newsletter, all the basics you want to have in place. And so that's what I think of as kind of we start there. And this is what I teach in my class. And then from there, I really recommend people look at social proof. And social proof, that's the idea of other people talking about the experience of reading your book. So yeah, obviously the most recent obvious one is reviews, right? People doing reviews, but author endorsements, influencers, reaching out to influencers, those are all in the category of social proof. So is word of mouth when someone else is talking about your book. And what I like about focusing there first is, you can say whatever you want about how awesome your book is, but is it more credible if I say my book is awesome or if Paulette says my book is awesome? Vice versa.
Paulette says the book is awesome. You're gold. And thanks everyone for commenting in the chats. Thank you. She's holding my book.
See, I have Paulette's book in my hand, the most recent one, which I wrote a review of, and it is awesome. Just in case anyone's wondering, awesome. I love it.
It's also available in hardcover, y'all. See that? Isn't that cute? Where's the camera? There it is. Okay, cool.
So the point is,
Always
it's
be
much more,
marketing.
yeah, my point is, it's much more credible when I tell you how fabulous Paulette's book is than when she tells you, right? When I tell you
Yes.
it's dealing with issues of racism, and it really took me on this journey where I was like with the main character, and she was this really strong woman, and I really related to her. Like, it's so much more credible if I say it versus when Paulette says it. And so that's why you want to focus on social proof. It's other people talking about your book. And also, the good news is that isn't terribly expensive, okay? Compared to awareness, which is where you're at trying to make people aware that your book exists. And that can be insanely expensive, right? That's where people hire a publicist, for example, and they might spend a boatload of money on a publicist. Some people spend 15, 20, 25,000 dollars and up on a publicist.
Yes.
And
Yes.
awareness alone doesn't sell books. And that's one of the points I make in my class. Like, I'm fine, let's go do some things on awareness, but let's just remember that awareness alone without the social proof won't sell your book. Okay, you can go think about it. If you hear about a book and you go read the blurb, and the blurb is kind of interesting as a reader, but there's no other proof, there's no reviews. It has 3 reviews in total, and there's no author endorsements, and there's no information on what anyone else thought of that book. Are you going to buy that book? Or are you going to wait and see until you hear more? You're going to wait and see. And so that's the challenge with just awareness stuff. And then the last part of my framework is reason to act. And that is give people a reason to buy your book now versus next week. And there are lots of different ways to do that, not just discounting the price. I think people like to think discount the price is the only way to give people a reason to buy now. But I'll tell you, one of the best reasons to buy now is if you're opposite an author at a table and an author is signing books. Why would you then go home and order the same book on Amazon and get it next week when you've got a real human author talking to you who's willing to sign it with your name? And so that's a brilliant reason to act, which is not discounted pricing. So I like to also say, don't just think giving people a reason to act is just about discounting the price of the book. Sure, that can be a very effective marketing tactic, especially when combined with some other things like promo stacking, but it's not the only way to give people a reason to act. You can have special access to the author, special downloads that you only get if you buy in a certain period, lots of things you can do, but that's the last part of the framework. And if you want to have a good marketing plan from my perspective, you need all of these, right? You need a little bit in awareness, you need your social proof, and you want to give people a reason to act, but you can have 1 or 2 things in each category, and that's a very solid plan in total.
Yeah,
so
for
that's how I
sure.
think about it.
And exactly. And you don't, there's things that you need to do right away, and there's things that you kind of roll out. And then it's also how you execute all of that. Are you doing it in a professional way? Are there typos in your book description? Are you following best practices for cover design? We'll get into an episode on cover design. We're working on that. So it's all about what you need to do and then how you execute it, that together can, lead you to a successful place.
Exactly. And I'm also loving, we're seeing some of the comments on the live here. Someone I know who's in my class right now is saying she really likes the framework. That's really nice to hear. And Gail Priest, whose book I actually just read, Soul Dancing, which is absolutely phenomenal. That's in the category of books I've been talking to everybody about. Like every time I meet someone right now, I'm like, have you read this one?
People, if you have not read Soul Dancing, just go get it, people. Because I'm going to tell you something I didn't tell anybody. Like, it was my husband's birthday, and I was sitting there reading Gail's book because that's all I wanted to do that day. Sorry, honey. It was really juicy, and I wanted to get back to it. So that's the best thing you can do in marketing is write a good book. Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Gail.
Exactly.
Yes, we love you.
We love you. And I love it. It's actually a great example of sometimes it gets tricky marketing a book when it crosses genres. So Soul Dancing is very imaginative, and it deals with the afterlife and a character being in different bodies in the afterlife. I don't think I'm giving a spoiler here. And so it's really hard to describe, right? Talk about a book that's like difficult to describe. But I find that when you focus on the experience of how it made you feel, and it made me feel like love is possible, and it made me feel hopeful, and it made me feel like refreshed reading it. And I find that sometimes it's easier for other people to describe the experience of your book than to describe the content and the plot.
Yeah, for sure. And then it also touched on like different themes that might be taboo in some things. It touched a little bit on religion, a little bit, on, some, it has a few triggers in there but it's handled it all so beautifully. You never got overwhelmed. You were really engaged with the story and you were present. So I think that's another beautiful way of as artists, as creators, that we can write what we want, but then be mindful of what the marketplace is expecting and put it in that context. So I think that that's a great way to think about marketing, because you should be thinking about marketing as you're writing the book as well, as much as you can, just to, if I'm going to go this direction or that direction, another check for you is what's right for your genre or for your reader, your ideal reader. What are they looking for?
Oh, interesting. So one of the things, this is perfect. One of the things we agreed on up front is Paulette and I will disagree sometimes. And that's why
Yes.
there's two of us hosting the podcast, because we don't want to always agree, because things differ, right? They differ by publishing model, they differ by type of book. So this is really interesting, because I think Gail, while she was writing this book, she's probably cringing here, like that we're talking about her book as an example so much. This was not planned at all. It
Not
just so
planned,
happens,
people. This is live.
just so happened that Paulette and I both read and adored this book. Okay. But, if Gail were writing this book and she were thinking too much about the reader, she might say, oh no, this book crosses genres. I should change it to only be in one genre. And it would be easier to sell if it didn't cross genres and it wasn't like across multiple, like you got a little bit of supernatural, a big bit of a love story. You got women's fiction. Like, she might say, if she put her head in her head as she was writing, how best do I market and sell this? I think it might have stalled her out. We could ask her later. But
right. No, but my only point was, I think we're on the same page. It's basically like if you're at a place and you're trying to make a choice, you're not sure which way to go. And like the playing field is equal. You could use as a reference point, what are genre expectations? What would my ideal reader prefer me do in this case? And it's more of that neutral playing field, not like you're trying to write to market or anything like that, because I certainly don't do that. And I wouldn't advise others unless.
Right. Some people write to market. Some people believe very strongly in writing to market. I probably am not doing it. I'm writing for passion, for like love of the art. As a way to say it, that sounds weird. It sounds pretentious, but like, I wouldn't be writing what I'm writing if I was trying to sell the most copies. I'd be writing romance. I'm probably writing erotic, steamy romance, because that is where the market is, where a lot of people are buying those books and they love them to death. Right. But I'm writing these difficult books for me to write, which are women's fiction that are all emotion, and it's way harder to get that on the page, and I probably could write other things faster. So sometimes there's also the element of just like, what are you passionate about and what's going to bring you joy? And you only write so many books in your lifetime. So write what's going to bring you that joy as well.
Yeah, you have to have the joy. You need to focus on the joy, because if you don't like it when you're reading, people will pick up on that in the page. Like in my last book that I just wrote, What Eyes Can't See, that was my first book that I wrote that I never got sick of editing, because I just loved it. And I feel like the response is showing that. So you have to keep the joy in your writing. And if you don't like it, then it's going to be hard for you to advocate it in a marketing space, trying to get other people to read it too.
And so some of the topics I know we're going to talk about, we'll probably need to do an episode on writing to market and the pros and cons of writing to market.
I'm going to write that down. Writing to market.
There we go. And we've had some great suggestions, and we'll talk more about, we'd love some more ideas. But some of the topics we already have on our list for episodes here is how to get reviews. I've heard that's a big one. How to identify your target reader the right way. Certainly some things around ads, some things around, I think our next episode is going to be how to market your book after it comes out. And that one we're very excited about, because we all talk about launches, but how do you actually market after it's out the door? And we're inviting you, we'll show you specifically how at the end of the episode, we're inviting you to tell us. We're very interested in what topics you would like and what experts you'd like us to bring in.
For sure. Yeah, I'm hoping for us, and I think we both agree on this, Lainey, is we don't want to just tell you the what, we want to tell you the why. Because so much of what you read out there in terms of marketing advice centers on, you should do this. But then it doesn't really tell you why, so then you can decide if that's the right choice for you, because publishing path, genre, where you are in your career, what your priorities are, all of that plays into whether that's a good choice for you. And so we'll hopefully be able to give you the context behind a lot of advice so that you can decide whether, that's not for me, or oh my god, I have to get on that right away.
When I advise my class on awareness activities, and the thing with awareness activities for your book is there are like hundreds of things you could do, right? And most of them you won't even know the results, and it's kind of frustrating. But awareness, you could do hundreds of things. And one of the things I say to the class, in addition to only do things that hit on your target reader, one of the things I say to them is do the stuff that brings you joy. If something is entirely draining for you and going to sit face to face at a book fair will require you to have a week of recovery time and to hide under the table, maybe just don't do it. Like, do something else instead. Like, I'm a big believer in don't do the stuff that's going to drain all your energy and make you feel like crap.
Yeah, for sure. And because all of this stuff takes effort and energy, and there's only so much in the day. I mean, we all have other things going on in our lives. We have family obligations. We, may work or whatever. We just want to have time to, watch TV. So, like,
Read,
we don't have to be
read.
Yeah, I know. Read books. Exactly. It's so funny because we sometimes get so hyper focus on executing that we drain ourselves and then have to like hit a wall and recover. So we like to build a sustainable way of being so that we can enjoy all facets of our life at the same time.
And we're all dealing with different things. Like me, I have a chronic health condition, and people think of me as this really high energy person, and I am 80% of the time. And then there's that 5-10% of the time where I'm just a mess and I can't do anything that week. And you have to be able to roll with that. And so I have empathy for anyone who doesn't have complete control of their own situation, because it feels that way to me. And I have to kind of build a plan that allows me to not have complete control of my own health at all times.
Yeah, for sure. Health is important. And then sometimes we just have to give ourselves grace that there's other priorities in the life and other stuff has to come first. And, not beat ourselves up about not running your promo because, you had something serious going on and you just didn't have the brain space to manage it all.
That was this week for me. A lot of personal stuff going on. My mom broke her shoulder. She's been in and out of the ER. It's like life sometimes just gets in the way of the stuff you had planned. And I think I've been trying to take the longer term view as well. Like, it doesn't really matter in this particular 24 hours whether you do those things to market your book. You're in this as a career author. You probably don't have one chance, one book, one day, right? Like, you know this, right? You're getting so much traction now on the third book in your series, but probably the first one. The first one probably felt like it was make or break, but look at this. The third one is the one taking off like crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of hilarious. The first book took me like 17 years to write, and so many that one I did query, and then I decided to self-publish, and it became a whole thing. But this one, I just wrote, I think it was Lynn Gladner's Substack. She interviewed me for that, and it was like, I wrote for her, like, your first book will be your worst. And I kind of feel that way. I just feel like, anything you do over and over again, you get better and better. And I think books are just the same way, but you feel so invested in it. You want to make sure it gets its time in the sun.
Right. So one of the things we're going to have in each of our episodes is a little sponsored segment. And when I say sponsored segment, don't worry, we're not allowed to play you some recording to buy Coca-Cola. In this episode, Paulette and I are actually going to talk about what we offer. And I want to just say a quick thing about a sponsorship for women writers, women's books. And then we're going to talk about the biggest mistakes that authors make, and a few minutes about what are those mistakes that we've seen that most or many authors make that you might want to avoid. But before that, let's do our little sponsored segment. And basically, what we're just going to do is Paulette and I are going to talk about what we offer and why we are experts in book marketing. And do you want me to go first, Paulette?
Yes, please.
Okay, so Paulette is also juggling a lot right now as well. So like I said, I got into helping authors with marketing because I saw all of this stuff out there that I started to really do what Becky Syme calls question the premise. Anytime someone would say to me, like, you must do this one thing to market your book, I would say, tell me why. Show me the results. Show me the data behind that. And the deeper I got into things, the more I was able to go, okay, so this works, but that doesn't. This works in some situations, but that definitely isn't worth your time. And I wanted to package all of that and put it in a consumable way for authors who were especially new in their career, trying to launch their first book or launch their first, second, third book. And so what I program, it's called 12 Weeks to Book Launch Success, where I walk a small group of authors, generally about 10, through building their book launch plan. 1 week at a time, we go through each topic, starting with the foundations, going to social proof, going to awareness, going to reason to act. And by the end of the 12 weeks, they have a complete plan to launch their book successfully. And so that's my kind of flagship program. I love it. It has sold out both of the times that I've offered it within a couple, 3 days of opening. So if you might be interested, my recommendation is just get on the wait list. I'll put the link for that on the episode notes on the website. I often turn people away also if I don't think I can help them. So for example, I'm not an expert in kidlit. I'm not going to bring someone in who does kidlit. I don't feel like I know how to help you in that. On the other hand, if you're doing a thriller or women's fiction or memoir, that I can solidly help you with. So if you have questions, feel free to email me. I will never try and hard sell you on joining the program. Quite the opposite. I turn people away all the time. But if you're interested, get on the wait list is my message, because I'll probably open it back up in the fall, and I expect it'll fill again in a few days after I open it. And then the other thing I offer is I have a free list where you can sign up for book marketing tips and webinars. We just did a webinar last night all around book blurbs, which was phenomenal, with Jessie Kniff, who is from Book Blurb Magic. And I do these about every 2 months on different topics, on different book marketing topics, kind of classes, online free classes. So join my list and I will get you all the information each time I have a class, so you can join those. So Paulette, I know you've been doing a lot to help indie authors in particular.
Yeah, I do. And it's funny because some of it crosses paths, but I do author coaching, and it started off just for indies and then it opened up for others, because what I kept finding was people were surfing the web and trying to self-service a lot of information to find their way, but they had questions that were specific to their use case. What should I do out of all of these things? And so it's really a time when we just sit and we talk. I had one author where we opened up her Amazon dashboard and I helped her upload her book. So click here, don't click that. So sometimes it's that hand holding that you don't get when you are self-publishing, because everything is on you to decide on your own. And when we're all starting, it's like drinking from a fire hose. There's just so much to know. So it's a little bit of that one-on-one attention. But because I just started back at work full time as a director of marketing, I have limited time. So if you go on my website and my author coaching page, you can click over to the Calendly, and if there's openings, you can grab those up. And if you are really desperate and need a time, you can email me at info@paulettestout.com, and we can see what we can do. But very limited coaching right now, but it is out there, and I try to post blogs. You can check out my blog too for just some self-service information too. So that's kind of the offering for authors right now.
And I so appreciate you keeping the time to do this after you went back to work full time, because I know you're juggling a lot. And I was like, don't give up, because I want you on this podcast with me, and it's going to be so much better with the two of us. So I'm glad you're able to make this time. And then the last thing I want to mention, we are broadcasting live into Women Writers, Women's Books, Facebook page and group. And that is a phenomenal group full of writers, and also is a Facebook page and a big Twitter account that talks to readers. And I just want to mention that Barbara Boss, who runs that site, does offer sponsorships. And that can be an interesting awareness activity, especially if you're writing fiction that is relevant to women. That could be an interesting way to get the word out. And she offers 1 and 2 month sponsorships for that. So given that she is helping us out by letting us reach her audience, I wanted to mention that I did that sponsorship, and several people in my class have done that. I think you did it at one point, Paulette, too.
I've done 2. Yeah, I've done 2. They're great. So for each book launch, I've done one. So for sure, it's a great resource, and it's just phenomenal reach for a very targeted audience.
And Barbara is also the loveliest and the biggest supporter of writers. And I like to support people who support other writers. Okay, so let's get to the piece we promised on book marketing mistakes. Yes. I referred to a little bit of this earlier. My biggest thing I see authors do, which is a huge mistake, is they go spend all their money on awareness. And the easiest way to do this is let's go with the traditional model. Let's talk about a big publisher model, because this is where I see this happen very often. You get an advance, and let's say it's your average advance, I think, is like $10,000 these days. So let's say it's a $10,000, $20,000 advance. Yippee, go you. You're one of the very few. And then you put all of that into a publisher, into a publicist, a PR person, a book publicist, right? You take that and you put that $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 into a book publicist, and that is all of your money. And you're feeling happy because someone else has got the problem of marketing your book. No, not my problem, off my hands. But what you've effectively done is spent all your money on awareness, and not on reason to act, not on social proof necessarily. And you're not going to sell any books as a result.
Nope, you won't.
Nope. And so that is probably the biggest mistake I see. And I think it's because authors are so excited at the idea that someone else can own this stuff for them. And so they're just like, here you go. Here's all my money. You own the problem. And it doesn't work, because publicists would be the first to tell you that they are not building you a complete marketing plan. They are focusing on PR, which is only one element of a marketing plan. And so it doesn't work. You don't sell books as a result of just doing PR.
Yeah. And the thing to remember about a publicist in PR in general is that you are paying for the effort. You are not paying for the outcome. So they will send lots of queries out to publications, to podcasts, newspapers, television stations, whatever, trying to get you interviews, trying to get you articles. They are doing a lot of work that is good work. But as an author, you can't bank on that because you can never tell if magazine X is going to run anything about your book, or if they're going to put you in the review 10 books they're reviewing. And as a smaller, earlier author, they're looking for newsworthy author stories. And frankly, we're not that yet.
Right.
So the
Right.
number of pickups you're going to get is not going to be a ton.
Yeah. And so we're not saying, don't get us wrong, don't quote us as Lainey and Paulette said, never hire a publicist. We're not saying that. We are saying don't put all your money only in awareness and nothing else. And you don't really have a complete marketing plan. In that case, you just have one element of a marketing plan, which does not work alone. So I know, Paulette, one of the things you wanted to talk about was unrealistic expectations.
Yes. And
being one of the things.
Yeah, and that dovetails really nicely with the publicist conversation, because I feel like when you hire a publicist, and again, we're not telling you not to, but if you do, and even if you don't, it's important to have realistic expectations as you begin your author journey, or as you advance along your author journey, because the reality is there are 20 or 30,000 books that get published every month. And while we have our book babies and we love them and we put our heart and soul into them for years or decades to bring them to life, no one's sitting around waiting for the book to come. So we just need to be realistic that sometimes there are, for the most cases, unless you're a unicorn, building an author platform and following takes time, and it won't happen with one book. There's that the metaphor on the magic bakery. Have you heard that one, Lainey?
No.
It's like if you go into a bakery and you look at the case, and the display case has lots of items, cakes and cookies and donuts and croissant and bread and whatever. When you are starting out, your bakery case has one item and the rest is empty. And it's much easier for people to find you and to engage with you when you have more stuff, when you have more items in your case to sell. And in our case, that's books or short stories, or even on Substack or whatever. You need more stuff to sell. And the more stuff you have, the more people you'll be able to attract to you. So having those realistic expectations of what to expect at, a beginning or wherever you are in your career, is probably you don't have a full bakery case just yet.
And the economics are so different, right? When someone can walk into your bakery and buy 3 items versus 1, because
Yes.
the cost of getting them to walk in the door to the bakery, let's go with the bakery analogy. Maybe you've got an advert in a local newspaper. Maybe you got some posters over town. The cost of running that advertising, getting that awareness is the same, whether they walk into the bakery and buy 1 item, or walk into the bakery and buy 3 cakes and buy an extra big cake to take home for mom. Like, it's the same cost to you. And so that's why the economics also, when you have 3, 4, 5 books, you're spending the same to acquire the reader, but they might read their way through your catalog. So the economics of that are so quantumly better than when you only have 1 book.
Yeah, and that's exactly true. I mean, I just think of myself like tonight I'm going to be at a bookstore, and that one opportunity was free, but sometimes you pay for tables. Most of the time you pay for tables, and if you have more items they can buy, then you can get to your break even much more quickly, because you have more stuff to sell.
And you hear this said again, that the best thing you can do to sell book 1 is write book 2, 3, 4 and get them into the world.
Yes.
I'm just going to give you an alternate perspective, which is that I was pretty conscious as a marketing person that it was going to take me a while to get my second book. It's taken even longer than I thought, right? My first book came out in 2020, so this is year 4. Oh my goodness. But I have kept growing my platform and kept growing my community and my readers, in part because, let's think about what I did. I created a podcast where I showcased other authors. I created an Instagram where I talked about other books that I enjoy. So I wasn't always talking about my own book. I wasn't saying, like, imagine I spent the last 4 years saying, buy my book from 4 years ago. How bad and annoying would that have been, right? But I'm still bringing new and unique opportunities to my base, right? Whether it's writers, whether it's other authors, or whether it's my readers, I'm bringing them things. Every newsletter I send out has an interesting book I have enjoyed, and I'm featuring other authors. So you can keep building your platform even if you don't have a second book to talk about. And I'm maybe an example of how to do that, but you can't do it based on only your own 1 book, right? You can't do it based on bringing people into the bakery and saying, buy my book 5 times instead of once, right? That ain't gonna work. And so,
Yes.
but you can put other people's books in the bakery with your book to expand the selection. And so I just want to get people thinking that, when you help and uplift other authors, it also helps you because it actually gives you something to talk to your readers about.
No, for sure. And I think that's another reason why, I guess what last year, I guess it was 2022, the end, I organized an anthology because I wasn't finding women fictions anthologies. So I partnered with an amazing author to bring it together. And then we ended up pulling together 12 authors, and that's 12 authors. And then that's getting yourselves, you're not only helping yourself, you're helping others. I think the community of authors is a very giving place. So if you are someone who is open to helping and elevating and amplifying others, it's only going to rebound on you when your work does release.
Yeah. And one of the other mistakes I see authors make is around social media. So social media can be a huge time drag, right? You can end up spending your life on social media if you're not careful. And let's say you decide that you're going to post once per day on Instagram or once every 2 days. The energy involved in that, if you actually add it up, is quite large, right? And, you're talking to the person who does spend a lot of time on social media here. So, you're allowed to question my sanity at this point. But what I see is authors misunderstanding what social media is for. They think, some authors think social media is to sell books. And I want to tell you right now, social media is not for selling books. Social media is for building community. And yes, when you build community and you get closer to people, that might ultimately lead to them feeling good about buying your book. But if you're on social media because you think it's a sales channel and you're just going to keep posting about your book every day, you're wasting your time, your energy, your creative energy, most importantly, and you don't have to do it. Social media is optional. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes I think I see people make is they're told they have to be on Instagram or TikTok or whatever the platform, and they're doing it because someone told them they needed to do it, not because they really understand why they're there and why they're putting so much energy into it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I just want to clarify also that I think you're talking about organic social here. This is just when you go on and post on
Yes,
your
I
own
am.
profile versus running ads on social media.
Correct.
Because
Good
you can sell
clarification.
books that way, and we'll
Yeah.
cover that in other episodes. But for sure, and especially people who force themselves into it and they don't like it, and it's just a bad look for everybody because no one wants sad social posts. People smell that out really quick. So do
Right.
again what brings you joy.
And then the last one I had noted down that we wanted to talk about in mistakes was this idea of not understanding your own goals and what you're trying to accomplish. And then I also wrote down we want to talk a little bit about our target reader. That was the other
Yeah.
one that was hot for us.
Right, right. So just quickly for me in terms of I think that sometimes one of the mistakes authors make is, they're doing all the things and then the book comes out and stuff happens or stuff doesn't happen and they start feeling all the emotions start up. It's better than they thought, it's worse than they thought, or however it is. But they have no context to kind of process the information and emotions because most haven't sat down to say, what does success look like for me? Why am I writing? What is my why? And if you do that, and even if you write it down, I really encourage you, write it on a piece of paper. Why am I writing? What do I hope to accomplish with this book release? What do I hope to accomplish with my writing life? Because if you do that, then you have an easier way to process the information. What happens? The book sells, it doesn't sell, people like it, they don't like it. You basically have a way to frame that in accordance to what it means for you. And everyone's why is different. So that's why you can't look at what someone else's book is selling or doing or whatever and make that your own because they may have a very different why than you have. So they're going about their marketing life and their book life in a different way than you are because you are writing for yourself. You kind of don't care how many books you sell or don't want too many because you're just trying to get it out there because it's that's your why. So writing down your why will help you make so many decisions in your life and it'll also help you kind of manage your mindset and your mental health around what happens after you publish.
I love that. In fact, I taught the last week of 12 this week for my second round of the program that I have, the book marketing program. And one of the things I recommended to them, so this is the last week, we're finishing, they've got their complete plan together, was to write their goals on a Post-it note and put it on their computer. And whenever you feel that pang of jealousy that you're comparing to another author, go back and look at your goals on your Post-it note, because that's what you should be comparing to, not to some other author, which, by the way, you're not seeing the real version of what's going on in that author author's life. You're seeing the post social media exterior, but like for me right now, the example of that is some of the authors who brought out books the same year as me in my debut year, they've brought out like 3 or 4 books since. And, I could make myself feel terrible by going, gosh, I'm the slowest writer in the universe, which, hey, it's possible, but I'm the slowest writer in the universe. But, I don't know whether they wrote those books before the first book came out. For all I know, over 20 years, they wrote all of these books that came out in the last 3 years. And then they finally were able to get published, and they had this huge back catalog of books, and they brought them out once a year. So I don't know that I write any slower or faster than them just from seeing the external social media view. And so my point is, it's a contorted compare. You're not comparing to the reality, and it's not helpful, right? I don't know who said it. They said comparison is the thief of joy. And I think this is so true.
That's really good. That is good.
Yeah. So I was talking to my class about this very topic of write your goals on a Post-it note. And when you feel yourself comparing, try and take yourself back to comparing to that instead of comparing to the bigger someone else, the New York Times bestseller, whatever it is. You don't know their journey. You don't know what it took to get there. And it's really easy to compare your journey, which is very different, and you're at a different stage, with somebody else's journey that isn't even a picture of reality. It's a lovely, pretty social media tie a bow on it version.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that. I love that. And the other piece about the importance of writing it down. So everyone on Lainey's course, please listen, do your homework, because you can then not move the goalposts on yourself. I do that all the time. I say, this will make me happy. And then I get this, and I'm like, oh, but it's not as good as that. And I'm like, whoa. I wrote this. Like when I first wrote my first book, I was just so happy if one person read it. I would be so happy if just one person read and loved my book. And I'm like, oh, how many reviews do I have? So we move the goalposts on ourselves, and writing it down helps us avoid doing that.
That is so true. And like for me, when my debut came out, my goal was I wanted to be established as a credible author. Like that was part of what I wanted. I wasn't necessarily measuring it in number of sales or, these New York Times bestseller or USA's bestseller or any of those things. I saw it as the beginning of my author career. It's just my personal goals, right? And so when I compared back, like, why did I do things like apply for a bunch of awards? Because I wanted to establish my own credibility for the next few books. And so I have my moments where I'm comparing to other authors and I'm like, oh my goodness, that person got, whatever it was, they sold way more copies than me. And then I have to take myself back and go, wait a minute, they're a traditional author, they're in bookstores, you're not. Like you're not comparing at all to the same thing. And so I just think it's really helpful to go back. I agree with you 100%. This was Paulette's suggestion, this idea of like really defining what you're trying to accomplish. I think this is one of the biggest mistakes we make, that and changing the benchmark goalposts along the way, like you say.
Yes.
So I think we're reaching the end of our time for our first episode
we're
here.
A little long.
That's okay. They'll forgive it. Our friends will forgive us here. And I do already see in the comments that we're getting some great ideas for future episodes, which is what we wanted to wrap up with, is inviting you to tell us what are the hot topics you would like to hear about. And for example, Beth, who's watching us, suggested the difference between marketing a standalone and a series. That is a great topic. And we could bring some guests in who've got personal experience. Good. And that's one of the things we want to do is it's not just going to be me and Paulette. We're actually bringing in guests who we think have done a nice job. Nobody's perfect, but if someone has some experience because they did something, it worked for them, we'd love to bring them in and to have them share that experience. And so I think bringing in some series writers in addition to you, Paulette, would be a great one. That would be a great episode.
Yep. I like that.
And so how do you tell us? I'm going to give you a couple of options. So the first is, if you're watching this on Facebook, on YouTube, you can just put it in the comments. Just make a comment and say, I'd love to see an episode about. We already actually got some great comments from the women's fiction writers group this week. I have a whole bunch of 20 suggested topics, which is amazing. The other thing is you can go to the website and tell us. Our website is bestofbookmarketing.com. And if you go to the contact page, there's actually a form there. And on that form, you can submit an idea. You can suggest a guest speaker. If there's someone you think is an expert that would be valuable to have on the podcast, you can even suggest yourself if you think you have some valuable expertise to share. So you can do that from the contact page on our website, or just comment on any of our social media posts and we will find it, because we're compiling a big list right now.
We do. We have probably years worth of topics. There's so much to say on this.
Yes. And talking of managing our energy, Paulette and I decided that we're going to do this once a month. So every second Friday of the month. You'll see us live at 1 p.m. Eastern, like we are right now. 2 weeks later, we'll bring out the audio podcast episode. And then the next month, we'll have another episode. So every month, we could go faster, but we decided we want to keep our own sanity. So we will be prioritizing topics based on what you say is most useful to you. But also keep an eye on the website because we're adding so many cool resources, starting with that book marketing framework I referenced that you can go get right now on the episode page of the website.
Right. And I think that's a nice cadence because every 2 weeks there'll be stuff out. If there's things we talked about in the episode, you want to listen again, you can pop onto your podcast platform of choice and listen to it there again. And then 2 weeks later, it will be live. So it just felt like a decent cadence for where we are in our lives and everything that's going on. So, right. Balance and grace, everybody. So
yes,
that's where we are.
Yes, I see a comment from Beth. She says, yes, keep that sanity. Absolutely. Yes. We're going to try our best. But the best way to know what's happening, because we all know that on social media, you don't see everything all the time. It's one of the problems with it. The best way, if you want to make sure, as we're putting out all these great freebies and resources and helpful stuff, is join our newsletter. I think we already have 30 people on it, and I just opened it up yesterday for people to join. So if you want,
go, people. Appreciation. I'm going to clap for you.
So that is the easiest way you'll get. We're not going to inundate you or spam you. You'll get maximum 2 newsletters a month, probably 1. And so join our newsletter. Go to the website, bestofbookmarketing.com/newsletter. You can get to it from the front page. And that is how you won't miss anything as we put new resources out. If you don't happen to see it pop up in your podcast platform or your social media, sign up for the newsletter. And that way you'll know whenever we're offering great new stuff.
Right. And when you do listen, subscribe to the show because that way it'll automatically populate in your library. And so you won't miss the show because we're just so awesome. But like, who wants to miss us, right?
And I'll just add, if you're listening to this on the audio podcast, please give us some stars and a rating, even if it's just go, Paulette and Lainey, keep going. It really helps to get some reviews when we have a new podcast that is going to be literally fresh, no reviews, starting from scratch. So yeah, especially for Apple Podcasts, the more you can give it some stars and some reviews, the more it helps it actually get visibility in the podcast platform, just like a book.
Yes. Cool.
Okay. Well, I think that's us, unless you have anything you wanted to say before we wrap up.
No, one quick thing is I will be in Worcester tonight. If you're listening live, Worcester, Massachusetts, at Root and Press bookstore tabling. So if you're in the area and want to pop by, please do so.
Yay. Thanks. And I'm working on also the next series of webinars that I'm going to do for free. So if you join my list, which you will if you download my framework, but if you join my book marketing tips list, you'll hear about all my future webinars that are coming up.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Lainey Cameron.
Thanks, Paulette. I am so excited that we're doing this together. Take care.